Well, we're here on Mr. Scammer, and once again, we're looking at fraud and how it impacts people around the state of Vermont and all around the United States in general. We're going to look at several different types of fraud today. We don't have a guest speaker on our program, but I think you'll find that many of these frauds and many of these scams are things that will impact you at one point or another, whether you're tech savvy or whether you're just simply looking for an opportunity to get away from the weather that we're enjoying in Vermont this spring and this winter. So let's start first of all with something called the travel scams or the travel problems. One thing that we've noticed, and I think everybody kind of notices, is about this time of the year, everyone gets that blah feeling. And you want to really get away from Vermont for a little while and then come back when the weather's a bit nicer. So between late February and mid-April to late April, many Vermonters tend to take a break, and it could be a break for a long period of time, or it could be a break for a very short period of time, maybe a week, maybe even just a weekend. So let's talk about what I call the 4 R's. What are the 4 R's? Well, basically, we're going to be looking at what are the red flags. What are the things that should alert you to a scam when it involves travel? Secondly, what research should you do before you take a trip? And maybe you've gotten an offer or an opportunity to get away. You'd like to know what a good vacation would be. What do you need to research? What do you need to check out? The next thing you need to do is you need to review the details of that trip, and we'll talk about that for a couple minutes. And then finally, you need to reserve. You need to identify what you're going to do, where you're going to stay, and reserve with a credit card. So let's go back to number 1, the red flags. Con artists are pretty much aware of the fact that people in the northern part of the United States want to get away to warm climates. And as a result, what they often do is they often create scams either through telephone calls, it may be mailings, but that doesn't happen very often. More often, though, it's something that might appear as an opportunity through an email message or even a pop-up window on your computer. And these offers that you'll see are really great ones. Quite often, it's a free weekend, a free 4-day, 3-night vacation. It might be a very low-priced vacation or cruise. And if the offer sounds too good to be true, the first part of this red flag alert is it probably is too good to be true. So check it out first. If it's too good to be true, as I said, it likely is. Don't take the opportunity because it is likely to cause you a lot of pain in the long run. The next thing you want to do is you want to research that particular offer. And when I say research, I mean check out the company that's making the offer to you, find out through the Better Business Bureau and some other references whether or not that company has a good record or a bad record. You might even want to call the state of Vermont or your own state if you're not living in Vermont and find out through their Consumer Protection Office if that company has any complaints filed against it. Another thing you want to do is you want to check out the destination where that particular offer is being made. When you see a really discounted travel offer, quite often it's because there's something either wrong or something happening in that particular location that makes it less than desirable. So you want to check out the destination, make sure that the destination really has what you're looking for. Review the details. That's hint number 3. Reviewing the details means checking the confirmations. Don't rely on the people that you bought the particular trip from. Check out the location. Find out if you're staying at a particular hotel or using some particular form of travel, such as a particular airlines, maybe a cruise line, and find out if you definitely have a reservation and if that reservation is solid or firm. Quite often, these reservations can be less than solid. They could be in the event of somebody else canceling, in which case you really don't have a reservation. You have a standby situation. So you want to make sure you don't have a standby case. You want to verify that the activities that you want to do are really available at the location. The next thing you want to do is you want to do some reservations. And when you do the reservations, make sure you use a credit card. Don't use a money order. Don't use a debit card. Debit cards and money orders result in you losing the money immediately, and quite often, if it is a scam, you have no recourse. If you use a credit card to ensure your reservations, the result is that you can cancel, or at least you know for sure whether or not there is a situation that you need to be aware of. Credit card companies are very good at refunding money, particularly if they know that there is a scam involved. So those are the 4 R's that you need to take into account if you're planning on an opportunity to get away from the winter blahs in the state of Vermont. Again, they are: first of all, look for the red flags. Identify where the problems are. Secondly, do some research and research the location, research the provider, research whatever you plan on doing to make sure that that vacation is going to be the perfect vacation for you. Thirdly, review the details. Make sure there are confirmations on all your reservations. And finally, when you make your reservation, reserve it with a credit card. Mr. Scammer's second alert for today has to do with charities. Vermonters tend to be very generous people and are often looking for an opportunity to do good and to help others who are in need. And we want you to be sure that if you're making that donation, if you're trying to find a charity that's a worthwhile charity, and you want to make sure that the money that you're donating is going to a good cause, there are ways to check out the charity. First thing I want to do is I want to talk about 2 situations that I encountered that involve charities, and both of them are cases where the charities were not exactly doing what we thought they would want people to have done. First one is an organization that has contacted a lot of Vermonters, and many of you may be familiar with it. It's called the Vermont Professional Firefighters Association. The Firefighters Association is a legitimate organization, operates in Vermont, and it tries to do good by, for instance, doing educational projects for children. Young children getting coloring books that offer tips on fire safety and how to escape from a dangerous situation. The problem that the Vermont Professional Firefighters Association ran into a couple of years ago was it engaged a for-profit organization to do its fundraising, a professional fundraising organization. And in the process of doing their fundraising, most of the money that was being collected for the Vermont Professional Firefighters Association was actually going to the fundraisers for the work that they did to raise the money. The Vermont Attorney General's office investigated the situation, brought it to the attention of the public and to the Vermont Professional Association, and as a result, that organization has changed its practices and now utilizes a different approach to raising funds. That's not true of all beneficial organizations or charities. There was one operating in New England last fall called the New England Sheriff's Association. And I received a phone call from them, and the New England Sheriff's Association was collecting money through a professional fundraiser, and the objective of the funds was to buy bulletproof vests for canines. Now, we may think that's a rather odd situation, but I've checked with friends in law enforcement, and I was told that this is a quite legitimate operation, that the canines that the police forces use are quite often exposed to gunfire or other injury, and so the purpose of the bulletproof vest is pretty clear. The organization called me and through its professional fundraiser asked me for a donation. And there are a couple questions that everyone should ask whenever they are called or solicited on the phone. First of all, if you have caller do not call services on your phone, know that charities are not blocked by do not call. So they're legitimately calling me or calling you. Secondly, if they are a professional fundraiser that is making the call, they're obligated to tell you that. Now, they may not offer that information initially, but if you ask them, they have to respond yes or no. So in the case of this organization, I asked, are you a professional fundraiser? And the gentleman who responded said, yes, I am. Remember, the operation was to raise money for the New England Sheriff's Association in order to provide bulletproof vests. The second question that's critical when you're encountering this kind of a solicitation is to ask the person who's called what percentage or how much of the money being raised is actually going to the organization that you want the money to go to. In this case, I asked the gentleman that question, and his response was 16%. 16% of the money raised by this organization went to the New England Sheriff's Association. 84% of the money is retained by the fundraiser to cover their expenses. It's something that you want to consider. And if you feel that that's not really doing the kind of benefit that you think is necessary, don't donate the money. Hang up the phone. If you want to donate money, donate it to a legitimate charity. If you feel that that need that was being expressed is important, find out if there's a need locally. For instance, in your county sheriff's organization, if they're in need of bulletproof vests or any other equipment for their canines or for even their human counterparts. So beware. I'm going to show you a couple examples of fundraising, but before you decide to donate the money, maybe the good idea would be to check out the organization that is looking for money, looking for donations, and find out whether they're effective, whether they utilize the money appropriately, whether you can actually investigate that organization. There are three primary places that you can look. They're all online, and they are at no charge. One of them is called Charity Navigator. The second one is called Charity Watch, and the third one is called Give.org, which is actually part of the Better Business Bureau. Here are a couple examples, and I'm going to show you the first one, which I think most people in Vermont would recognize, and it's the rating for Vermont Public Radio, VPR. This happens to be a Charity Navigator report. And as you're looking at the one on the screen, let me walk you through the information that it provides. Looking at the top of the screen, you'll notice that there are some overall scores that are provided. And there are really three things that are given to you. One of them is, what's the financial rating of the organization? In this case, we're looking at Vermont Public Radio. And if you look at the overall, you'll see that their overall score is 93.8 out of 100 by Charity Navigator. And they're rated as a 4-star organization. Financial rating, which is basically what did they do with their money? Is the money that they're raised being spent on what they say they do? For instance, in Vermont Public Radio's case, this would be a matter of providing programming to the public. Do they really spend the money on programming to the public, or do they pay for their salaries, for their infrastructure, for things other than the programming? The second category that's provided here is accountability and transparency. And as you can see, they have a rather high rating of accountability. In the case of Vermont Public Radio, it's almost 100%. So with both of their ratings being above 90%, puts them in the top category of charities. If you notice on the web page that you're looking at, there are also a couple indicators, and you can see that there's a yellow dot in the graph. And that's where those two categories. The financial category and the accountability category meet. So when you have a situation that involves the accountability of an organization, you want to see that their rating is as far over on the right-hand side of the chart as possible. And for the financial rating, you want to see that number being as close to the top of the chart as possible. So if the chart shows that the organization is rated in the 4 category, it's very solid as far as Charity Navigator is concerned. You can also use another form of verification, and that is you can go to what the Better Business Bureau or Give.org rates Vermont Public Radio at. I haven't got a graphic on that, but I think you can imagine that's most likely going to be very high as well. Now we'll take another look at one of these charts, but in this case, we'll look at one for an organization that's not rated quite as highly as Vermont Public Radio. In the case of this one, we're talking about the Junior Achievement of Northern New England, which actually covers Vermont. And once again, I want you to take a look at the box that's outlined in red and the overall score and rating. In this case, much different than Vermont Public Radio, Junior Achievement of Northern New England is rated with 1 star. You may recall that Vermont Public Radio had a 4-star rating. In its financial ratings, the rating for Junior Achievement is 57 on a scale of 100. Their accountability and transparency rating is much higher. It's 96. So you can see their books, but this would tell you that the money that they're raising does not end up in the hands of the Junior Achievement objective, which would be preparing young people. Now, it may end up going into salaries for former executives or current executives to provide assistance or act as consultants, and you would have to check into the organization a little deeper than looking at this one chart. But it's a good example of how you can verify what a charity is doing and whether the work of that charity is doing what you want it to do and the money is going there. Once again, your best choice is often the local choice, and if you know of an organization that provides education or assistance to young people, by all means donate locally. Locally means you'll be able to observe the impact right away, very much in your own town. If you're like me, you probably end up getting a lot of packages. And you get them delivered by, could be the U.S. Postal Service, it could be by FedEx, it could also be by UPS. And we always look forward to that great package coming in the mail, particularly if we know that it's going to contain something that we're looking forward to receiving. One of the ways that scammers have been trying to get at people in different ways is to act as though they are contacting you on behalf of FedEx or UPS or the U.S. Postal Service. Most frequently, though, it's going to be either the UPS or FedEx organizations rather than the Postal Service. And the reason why con artists don't like using the Postal Service is the Postal Service has some law enforcement issues that it can bring to bear. And as a result, much more powerful in tracking down the scams. I'm going to show you an example of one scam that was perpetrated in the name of FedEx. This one was looking for information that it could then use and sell. So let's take a look at the graphic. And as you can see in very big letters on the graphic, there is mention of FedEx. Now, in the world of con artistry, this is called phishing, where the con artist is attempting to gain information from you that it can then use to either steal from you or to sell to someone else. And in this case, you can tell it's spear phishing because rather than have the kind of unknown quantity of message to unnamed recipient or something like that, or various recipients, this one has my name on it quite clearly. And in the text of the email, it shows FedEx, Dear Elliott Greenblott, we'd like to inform you that your package could not be delivered due to incomplete information. FedEx does not send out information like this. For one thing, if you've not had any problem getting a package from FedEx, then you likely would not get a message like this. But if you take a look at the very top of this email, you can see what the shipping address is. In other words, who sent out this email. And it says rep.fedex and then at ikexpress.com. If this email originated with FedEx, it would read at fedex.com. So we know right away that the email is not coming from FedEx. The second thing we know is that FedEx, in terms of validating an address, would probably want to know more than just, say, click here or click here to update my address. There would be something else to indicate that this was an official notice from FedEx. It doesn't show up. Who does this really go to? Well, through the magic of computer examination and opening up emails, what we find is that this email, when you respond to it, that does not go to FedEx. But what it does is it goes to 18 different commercial vendors. So somebody has set up a fake FedEx address. The result of you responding to this email means 18 commercial vendors now have your email address, and they can turn around and send you emails or market to you whether you want to or not get their information. So beware of the information that you're putting out. Even something as simple as responding to an email, in this case, will end up providing your information to likely scammers. One theme that I've tried to present today has to do with being aware and being careful of what happens online when you're using the internet. I've already mentioned one thing in the case of travel scams, and it brings out the first of our three major recommendations. Number one is if an offer that you're going to receive or that you have received is giving you something that is too good to be true, it likely is, and it likely is a scam. So beware of those too good to be true situations. Second alert, second general caution when dealing with internet marketing has to do, or even telephone marketing, has to do with something that is very obvious to see, but we often don't see it, and that is poor grammar or poor spelling in the messaging. This would show up as something that would be in the text. It might not even be in prominent text, but if you look carefully at the proposal that's being made to you, you find that there are some mistakes that if the company that was issuing this was really a legitimate company, they would not allow errors to show up in their marketing. And the third issue is looking very carefully at who's sending the message. And that means looking at an email message at what the sender's address is rather than your address. So if the sender's address is different than the offer that's being made, and this is very clear in the example I gave you with FedEx, if the address of the sender is not the same as the company that's being mentioned, that is a likely example of a scam. So if that's different, or if the URL, the address that appears on a web page, let's say it's a FedEx web page, or supposedly a FedEx web page, and what you see is something that is not FedEx in the URL, then again, it is most likely a scam. We're going to take a look at two very clear examples of how scams can appear. And in this case, it actually is a shopping situation that involves making a purchase from Apple. Apple Computer has a very active commercial market. It sells applications for iPhones, it sells software, and you can go online and go to Apple. Apple doesn't usually send you messages, though, about the products that you might have bought. And in the case of our first example, I want to see if you can recognize, or actually if you can spot some of the things that make this a fraudulent email. So let's take a look at the email right now. I'll give you a second to examine it. And this email message is kind of interesting. It says it's from Apple. It tells me that I have bought something that I'm not, might not want, and as a result, they're notifying me of it, and they're giving me an opportunity to make some changes in my order. So all I have to do is click on the order, and I can make the changes. I look at this, and as somebody who may have purchased something from Apple, this doesn't look like anything that I've bought. So how can I get out of this? Is there a way that I can cancel this offer? And if I read the email very carefully, and I look towards the bottom of the email, you can see that there is an opportunity to cancel. I asked you at the start to look at this and consider what would be the signs of a fraudulent message. And if we put the second slide up of this, I think you'll see, hopefully you've spotted these yourself, but at the very top, the email return address of this message is mailed to payment_struck3 at verthrese.net. Does not sound very much like Apple. Secondly, under the to, if you recall, I said, look for emails that come directly to you. And in this case, my name doesn't appear on this. It says, Dear Customer, but it also says to order at applestore.com. Applestore.com is not the email address for Apple. So there are a couple things right away at the very top of this message that should be alerts to the fact that it's a fraudulent message. The next thing to look at is the text of the message itself. And if you read the text, it says, we send notification about your order information. Misspelling, notification, notifiction. Apple computer most likely would not have sent out a message that had an error that's that glaring. And there's one other item that you should take a look at, and that is if you wanted to cancel this particular order, look at the bottom of this advertisement or this email, and you'll see that it does say cancel. But I've circled the word cancel, and the spelling is C-A-N-C-L-E. Once again, a gross error in terms of an email message. Now let's take a look at a real Apple email order. This is a receipt that I received for an Apple purchase that I make, and as you can see, it's quite different than the one that we had as a fraudulent one. It has the Apple logo. It has my name very clearly on this. It also has my billing address, so you can all send me bills if you want to do that. And it tells you what I bought. And in this case, I was buying a storage plan from Apple. It tells how much I pay for the storage plan. It shows my total bill, and I can verify it. It also has, if I want to question it, I can contact Apple. My suggestion when you receive the fraudulent email that says Apple, and it appears to come from Apple, but again, it's fraud, take a couple minutes and send an email to Apple. Attach that particular email to it, and the Apple address that you would want to send it to is abuse@apple.com. And that way they're aware of the fact that there are con artists out there who are mimicking the Apple website and trying to steal from you. Now, sometimes the thing that they're stealing from you is not money, it's just the information about your account. On the particular fraudulent email that I received, if I had opened up the email, which I do, but I recommend that you not do, it asked for initially my Apple ID, the one that I use to get to my Apple account. It asks for my Apple password. So had I filled in that information, they would already be able to access my Apple account. Once I provided them with that, it asked me for a credit card number. It asked me for the security code on the credit card, and it asked me for the expiration date. It even asked me for my social security number. So whenever that happens, you know that it's a fraud, but by that point, you would have put in your ID and password, and they would already have that information. When you get a fraudulent email, a fraudulent message, don't open it up, move it to your junk folder, delete it, but don't click on anything on that message, because as a result, you can end up in some serious trouble. So again, beware of what the message carries, beware of how the message is set up, and you can save yourself the pain of being scammed. We spent a lot of time today talking about computer issues and cyber problems that people might have. And we do know that a lot of people in the public tend to spend time on computers. And from time to time, while you're doing that, something might pop up on your screen that is a bit frightening. And it is an alert. I have two examples of them that I want you to take a look at. The first one is an example of an alert that we've seen many times on PCs, computers running Windows software. In fact, many technicians have a term for this, and it's called the blue screen of death. It alerts you that there's a problem on your computer, that the problem is such that you don't want to shut off your computer, you don't want to do anything, because if you interfere with this message, it will you'll end up with your data erased, you might end up with a virus being put on your computer. So the instruction is very clear. Here's a phone number, call the phone number, and the people on the other end will help you out. It's a very common scam. It's a very common attempt to get you to do one of two things. The first thing that they're trying to do, obviously, is scare you. And once they've scared you enough that you make the phone call, that gives them the opportunity to say something like, well, we can take care of the problem on your computer, and there's only two things that you have to do. The first thing you have to do is you have to pay us $79.95, or it could be $99.95, or it could be any amount. But the idea here is that there's a fee for having them do the work that they're going to do. They will likely ask you to pay that fee using a debit card, or to pay that fee using a gift card. If that happens, it's an automatic indicator that this is a scam. Secondly, they will ask you for the opportunity to actually get into your computer, to give them access to the computer over the internet. When that happens, they're able to access everything on your computer. They're able to copy everything on your computer. When I say computer, I'm kind of loosely saying technology, because we could be talking about a computer, a tablet, iPad, a cell phone, that's a smartphone. So a variety of different things that could show up that use technology and use the internet. Con artists are aware of that, and they're very willing to help you out, and so to speak, by going into your computer and correcting the problem. So there are two problems, two scams, or two issues that you have to look for. One is that pay a fee, have the problem solved, but pay the fee through a non-traditional way. They're not going to ask you generally for a credit card number. What they'll ask you for is something that's untraceable. The other thing is the access into your computer. Now, some people think, I don't have to worry about viruses, and I don't have to worry about this kind of fraud because I have an Apple or I have an iPad. The second graphic shows you what people who have iPhones, people who have Apple computers, Macintosh, or iPads will see on their computer. Once again, it has that ugly screen message that says, potentially, in this case, infected with 3 viruses, and then it even goes on to tell you what the viruses are. So now they've added a level of information for what you're looking at. But as you can see, I've done something to this email encircling the send from address. This was sent from somebody other than Apple Computer. So when you see a send address that doesn't match the sender's actual name, in this case, if Apple was sending me a message, it would say apple.com. It's not from apple.com. So we're dealing with, again, a scammer, a fraud that's being attempted. And as with the other case on the PC, there's a way to contact them. It also has the ominous line, personal banking information are at risk. So the idea here is to scare you into taking some steps that you might regret. So what do you do? What should you be considering? First of all, I think it's important to know that nobody from Apple Computer, nobody from Microsoft, or you might get a phone call or even see a message that says, there's a problem with your Windows. If I get that call, I will say something kind of silly, such as, well, gee, you know, we just put on new Windows, and I don't know what there could be as a problem. But if somebody says that, it's automatically an indicator that it's a scam. Don't go any further with that. Apple, Microsoft, Intel will not notify you that there's a problem on your computer. They do not monitor everybody's computer in the world. And that's what it amounts to. So you can ask yourself the question, why are you contacting me? Of course, the response from the caller, if it's a phone call, is, well, we found this virus. They're not from Apple. They're not from Microsoft. So what do you do? Well, we recommend that you hang up and you report that scam. Just as I said earlier in this program, report the scam, in this case to Apple, or report it to Microsoft, or report it to Intel, whoever's mentioned in the scam. If it's an email scam, you can actually forward that email to the email protection people at those different companies. They want to know what's happening out there so they can put out public news alerts and let the public know that there's a problem. They won't send you individually a message. When Microsoft and Apple will act is when 10,000, 20,000 people call them, write them, email them about a problem. And then they'll look into that problem and probably issue what's called a patch or repair the problem. That's happened recently with Apple Computer when it discovered there was a breach involving iPhones and the telephone and the camera on the iPhone. They issued a repair because people reported there was a problem. If we don't report the problems, the company doesn't know that there is a problem. So what should you do? What are the steps that you should take as a consumer, as a user? Let's take a look at the major steps. First of all, what you want to do is make sure that the software that you're using on your computer, meaning any of the applications that you have, as well as the operating system on your computer, are up to date. In the case of Apple, they send notices to your computer when there's an update, and it's very easy to verify that it's from Apple. In the case of Microsoft, they will put out news notices saying there is a new version of Microsoft Windows that's available. Many people don't like upgrading their systems, and the reason why, I guess there are a couple reasons. First of all, some of the changes that are made in operating systems mean you have to learn new routines. And the way the computer operates may be a little different than what you're used to. So you're out of your comfort zone. The other reason why people don't upgrade is because they don't like to pay any fees that might be associated with it. For example, Microsoft Windows is currently in the Windows 10 version of the operating system. About 25% of the people in the United States today operate their Windows-based computers with Windows XP. That's an operating system that was created in the late 1990s, I would say 1998, 1999. So they're working with a system that is 20 years old. It's not updated or maintained by Microsoft. Microsoft doesn't do anything to support it. The software that's available, most new software will not run on it, but many of the people who use those older computers don't feel they need any new software, so it's not going to bother them. The idea is to maintain the operating system and have it up to date. Next, make sure that if you have virus protection software, that the virus protection software is up to date. Most of the companies that produce virus protection software will produce it on an annual basis. You're licensed to use it for a year. At the end of the year, your license expires. Now, some people feel that, I can just live with whatever I had and I don't need to upgrade my license. In the case of most computer viruses, though, viruses mutate, they change, and the folks who design them design new ones almost every day. So if you don't maintain the virus protection software, you're not having your computer at its safest level. So we recommend that you buy virus protection software. And if you have an Apple computer, consider it for your Apple computer, because Apple Macintosh computers, Apple iPads are vulnerable to viruses and malware. It's important that, again, you keep your operating system up to date and you have the up-to-date version of protection. Thank you. AARP Fraud Watch is a program that was set up approximately 6 years ago as a way to educate the public and provide resources to the public free of charge in the area of fraud protection and fraud education. We've been doing this in Vermont now for about 4.5 years, and I'm proud to have been the person delivering the message to many Vermonters. I've spoken to over 2,000 or 3,000 people in the past 4 years, and it's been rewarding to know that people have been able to save themselves from being victims of fraud. In the process, though, I've discovered a couple things, and one is that we are in need. Fraud Watch is in need of you. Right now, we have about 12 people who serve in the state of Vermont, and we're looking for Fraud Watch volunteers. Our volunteers do a number of different things. One is they do presentations in numerous places, from senior centers to churches to community libraries to large public venues such as hotel conferences. We also do other things such as staff information tables at markets, fairs, conferences. We also provide services to individuals in the communities. We're looking for volunteers to join this process, and we will do the training that's necessary to bring you on board and give you the tools that you need to bring the message to your neighbors, your friends, and your family members. The next thing we need places to speak. We have 3 programs that we provide in the state of Vermont. One of them is a generic program. We call it our flagship because it basically sets the tone on fraud and presents different topics on fraud, but it's very generic. We have specific programs that we do. One of them is on cyber fraud and computer fraud. Second one is identity theft. And we have a third one, which is geared towards the frauds that are perpetrated against veterans. We look for venues, for locations that we can make these presentations, and we'll make them to any size group, whether it's a PTA, a church group, community center, a library, a senior center, a club or an organization in a town, a group of neighbors who get together and want to hear about fraud. So please contact us. You have my email address that's appearing on the screen right now. Be free to use that and contact us, and we'd be happy to respond. Again, we're looking for volunteers. We're looking for places where we can carry this message. and thank you.